Hey guys, Naz here with another video. In this video, I'll be giving you my brutally honest review of God of War Ragnarok. Before we get into this review, I just want to state this is my return to the series since the PlayStation 2 days, and I do not have any knowledge on the 2018 version of the series. So if you're looking for that, this isn't the review for you. Now if you just want an honest review, then you're in the right place. So with that out the way, let's get into this, yeah? We'll cover the story first since I'm sure that's what most of us play for. As someone who came into this without prior knowledge from the prequel, it was nice that they had a little recap of the last game. The story picks up right where you left off, but I didn't feel lost. I understood everything that was going on, and the story was well written with a massive plot twist that completely had me speechless. Without getting into spoiler territory, you're trying to prevent the prophecies by having Ragnarok come true, but despite everything we do, it ends up happening anyway. Usually when you play a game, there's moments where it feels boring or tacked on, so the development team can reach a certain amount of playtime, but that wasn't the case here. The story was enhanced with phenomenal voice acting. Each character had their own personalities, and it actually felt like humans talking to each other with witty banter and petty comments thrown in with sarcastic and snarky tones. To accentuate this, facial expressions were spot on to humans, and it was scary how well Team Sony Santa Monica captured this. This series has come a long way since I last played, and I indulge in every bit of it. Before we move on to gameplay, the side quests in this game felt as if they were a part of the main story. They either flesh out the characters more or added lore pieces to the main story. Each of them felt important to do and never a chore. I did as many side quests I could before I advanced the main story, as they were so good and it expands on the lore's realm, and I just wanted to know more. I remember spending a whole day just doing side quests, and I had a blast. I usually don't dedicate a whole section just for graphics, but oh my days. This game blew me away. I often found myself watching cutscenes waiting for the game to prompt me that I could move because the transition from cutscene to gameplay graphics are the same. They did such a fantastic job. I can't believe that gaming has come this far. The attention to detail is the best I've seen in gaming in a long time. The skin and hair textures are so lifelike that I thought they were actually real. The clothing they wore was so detailed you could see the weaves of where the thread passed through. The environment was absolutely breathtaking, with the winds moving the leaves on the trees to the gentle waves crashing to the shore. Each biome looked so good that I wanted to go there myself. The skyboxes to background were done with so much work and care that I had to mention it. This game is eye candy, and I found myself in awe just taking in each area I went to. It's a shame this video won't do justice to the game, as compressed quality takes away from what the actual game looks like. I played in performance mode and I was in disbelief, so I could only fathom how gorgeous this game would look in quality mode with the hardware to fully take advantage of it. To complement the eye candy, we have ear candy with how realistic the game sounds. Each swing I took with my axe into the enemy's flesh, to my shield parrying off a sword, you could hear the sound so well that it felt like the team actually did live demonstrations of this to get realistic sound effects. The environmental sounds were spot on to the wildlife, and it felt like I was actually in each biome. Team Sony Santa Monica did a fantastic job, and I heard this game was delayed? I'm so glad they gave themselves the time they needed to polish off this beauty. Now let's go to gameplay. God of War is an action game at its core, with light and heavy attacks being your bread and butter for your damage output, while blocking, parrying, and dodge rolls are your staple for survival. To further enhance this genre, there are attacks with yellow rings. These can break your guard, so you have to time your block just before the hit is about to connect to parry it. Otherwise, you'll be wide open to an attack if you didn't dodge roll it. Red ring attacks are unguardable and you must dodge roll to avoid damage, with some attacks having a unique way of handling them. And lastly, there are blue ring attacks that can't be blocked or dodge roll, and you must interrupt them by shield bashing them. This all sounds simple, right? Well, try doing all of this with 5+ enemies on screen, with 1 or 2 off screen, doing a combination of melee and range attacks with a red and yellow ring attack thrown in. I've been gaming for 30+ years and I haven't played something this challenging before. I completed Nier Automata on very hard, which kills you in one hit, and I found this game harder. I played on Give Me God of War difficulty, and they didn't fail to deliver. I was constantly getting my butt handed to by the trash packs, as I found these harder than the actual boss fights. Each mob would kill me in 2 hits, making this one of the hardest action games I've ever played with the attack ring mechanics I mentioned prior. To add salt to my wound, I'm not that good at micromanaging multiple enemies at once, so this only hurt me more as the hardest trash fights had me fighting 6 to 7 enemies at once. But don't get me wrong, I found the boss fights challenging, but they were easier as with mostly one target to focus on, I could parry, dodge, and attack once I learned the timings. Before I forget, there's a stun mechanic. The white bar under an enemy's HP bar is a gauge that fills up when you attack them or block their incoming attacks. Failing to do so in a 5-second window will drastically have the gauge drop to the start, making you have to fill it up all over again. While you never have to do this, it is a core mechanic that speeds up combat, as this is usually an execution to most enemies in the game. Getting rid of one enemy on the battlefield only helps, and this is a form of iframes. Another mechanic is status. The Leviathan axe has ice attacks that'll slowly build up the frost debuff on enemies. Once it's full, the enemy will move slower, making it hard for them to hit you. This can further be taken advantage of if you swap to the Blades of Chaos, which has a skill tree node that does increased damage to frost enemies. This can also be done vice versa, as the Blade of Chaos has fire attacks, which will cause the burn debuff. This acts as a damage over time, and the Leviathan axe has a skill tree node that does more damage to burning enemies. This allowed for a swapping playstyle that was very enjoyable to master. Now let's discuss the RPG mechanics. Each weapon has a skill tree that allows you to learn more melee, range, or technique moves to improve your success in combat. If you use a skill enough, it'll upgrade to bronze, then silver, and lastly gold, where you can add a modification on it. Each weapon has an attachment that adds stats and a unique passive. An example is your light string combo now ends with a shockwave, or if you use your weapon's signature ability, you'll get a defense and stagger resistance buff. You get a handful of shields which all excel at something else. One may excel at stunning an enemy, while another could block yellow ring attacks. You can further improve your shields with an attachment that'll add a passive like increasing your window to parry, or if you interrupt a blue ring attack, you get a cooldown reduction. There's a chest, waist, and wrist equipment slot. Each come with stats, with the chest piece having a unique passive. These usually help enhance the playstyle further, like doing more damage with range attacks or giving you an attack and defense buff for blocking and parrying attacks. The waist and wrist piece can go together with the chest piece for a full set, as they all complement each other unless you truly want to min-max and swap pieces around. Waist and wrist pieces give a set bonus, so you usually want to use these together, with the chest piece being interchangeable. I was so excited to go see the vendor every time we advanced the game to see what new items they had to sell. I actually had a hard time picking one set as my staple, as there were so many good options to pick from. Just when I thought we were done, the game adds amulets later on, which gives set bonus once 3 are equipped. These all give stats and a unique passive, so you could treat this as another armor piece. There are also some that don't require 3 to activate, but a certain amount of stats. I have yet to decide which ones I like the most, as there are so many interesting options to pick from. Now that we're done with the RPG mechanics, let's talk about exploration, as this is what I did most of my playthrough. If you open your map, you'll see on the left side a handful of important objectives each area has for you to do. I spent a good amount of my time looking for Odin's Raven, as these give amazing rewards back at Niflheim. After you collect a certain amount, you get to open up one of these chests, which have some very powerful stuff in it. I won't spoil what's inside, because every time I opened one, I was so giddy waiting to see what would pop up on screen. Outside of the Ravens, there are Nornir chests that require you to solve a puzzle to open them. I thoroughly enjoyed these, as it got my brain working, and that's always a plus for me. Besides that, there are lore pieces to find that have lore on each realm you found it in. Artifacts are used to sell for hack silver, which you need a lot of if you plan on getting new items as they become available. And there's much more, but I'll leave that for you to discover on your own. Now, I've been listing off a lot of positives, right? What are the negatives, Nas? There honestly isn't any, but there is one glaring issue I had with the game, and that's target swapping. It cannot be remapped, and it's done by moving your right analog stick to the left or right. I couldn't find a sensitivity in the settings to match my playstyle, so I could swap seamlessly, as every 1 in 5 deaths I had was due to me not being able to swap to the correct target in time. I messed around with the aim assist to the lock-on camera, but nothing worked. I really don't understand why I couldn't remap this to R1 or L1 so combat could have been less frustrating. There were so many times that an enemy was at 5% HP and all I had to do was get one last hit in, but another enemy had me either dodge rolling or blocking a series attack, and your ally only attacks what you're targeting, so the enemy would heal back up to 50% HP. The more gaming has evolved, the less buttons we have that are empty, which is good, but not having the option to freely swap in an action RPG game, especially when the combat is so fast paced in God of War Ragnarok, is a shame, as it's my only complaint. Obviously, this issue I bring up is for the minority, because after 90 hours of gameplay, I was satisfied with my purchase, and I could only imagine the others would as well, because this game is a masterpiece and it gets a 10 out of 10. I highly recommend this game to anyone who likes an action RPG game, because God of War Ragnarok has a very fun and fast-paced combat system, amazing story, and it's one of the prettiest games I've ever played. I will definitely be going back and playing the prequel to see how everything ties up, and I can't wait to see what Team Sony Santa Monica has in store for us next. Don't forget, if this video brought value to you, please leave a like and consider subscribing to see more, as I play a wide array of RPG games and I break them down just like this. Until the next video, I'll see ya.